Second time's a charm, Ricky.
For those of you just joining us, I warmed up. I did this session earlier today at 11 Central, and should be good. Should be tight.
A little bit smaller group.
In retrospect, even though people emailed me telling me that, they said in Australia it'll be Friday and it'll be Good
I
Friday.
know.
And I was like, well, there's always the Pacific folk in the US and maybe some crazy UK folk. I don't know. But we still want to give everybody a fair shake to
It'll
join
be
these
fun.
sessions.
Yeah. So welcome to Tricks or Tips and Tricks Thursday with Ricky, our VP of Product. I'm going to moderate for him. I'm Saffie Ferris. And if you would, please put your question and answers in the question and answers area. You can chat freely in the chat area. But just want to remind everybody that these sessions are really for mastery of the product. So I prefer that we not do product updates and feature requests or questions about integrations, although we did get one this morning, which we should probably mention. So we'll make a little exception for
Yeah,
PF
that's fair.
today. So, but anyway, so without further ado, Ricky.
Take it over from me. Yeah. So again, if this is your first Tips and Tricks Thursday, welcome. Super chill, super casual. If it's not your first, welcome back. It's our second one ever, so that's nice. And just like Safi was saying, this is really for me to kind of take a topic that I get asked by from a lot of partners. I put a poll out, I get answers back. If you haven't answered that poll, if you've never seen that, it's in-app. I'll show that too during this webinar. And we'll cover that topic in any remaining time, however much there is, whether that's 20 minutes or 5 or 50 is totally up to you guys. It does not need to go to the full hour, although depending on how deep you want me to go, it will. And then lastly, like Safi was saying, it's not a product review session, not really a feature request stuff, because obviously I'm trying to show people how to use CloudRadial, you people. And if there's anything specific to your tenant, like you're like, hey, can you show me how to do something in mine? The answer is not on the webinar, but we can still help. In fact, if you reach out to success@cloudradio.com, or if you already know, that just goes to your account manager. You can reach out directly to your account manager. And then if there's something specific that you want to get applied and whatnot, we'll reach back out to you, set up a one-on-one. So just because I can't answer it on the webinar does not mean we don't need to, we can still help you, is the ultimate point. So that being said, what is the point of this Tips and Tricks Thursday? Well, again, the first thing that I'm taking from a lot of the poll topics is custom policies and reports. This was a highly requested one. The reason being, I think makes sense. We did a webinar a couple days ago on kind of understanding economic uncertainty where MSPs land. And that webinar was really focused towards more of our prospects of people that, don't yet have CloudRadial. But it got us kind of in the mood and thinking about how to kind of prove your value, how to understand where things are at with your clients, how to make sure you have a good way to measure where clients are in terms of, again, compliancy, just sheer efficiency. So just kind of contextualizing all that. So in this webinar, I'm going to cover the first bit of what policies are and how they can help you do that. In-app report customization, how that helps you kind of display those results and how you can customize how you display them in the first place. And then visualization of policies to show you kind of how you can make those appealing, how you can kind of fit those into a greater business review and where that all fits for you. And I want to start out with a little bit non-traditional, instead of just jumping into CloudRadial, to give further context. I really like this Reddit thread, and this is something that we mentioned in our 11 a.m. slot. This is pretty much the reason. Well, not the AI one actually. My bad. It's supposed to be this one right here. Here we go. How are we proving the value of cybersecurity clients to clients when nothing happens? And that's a great question. And again, we don't need to dive through all the responses in this thread, but the bigger point here is that a lot of MSPs struggle with this. This is something that everything's going well. Even the first comment here says, everything works. What are we paying them for? Nothing works. What are we paying them for? And policies, as you'll see in a second, is a good way to kind of show clients all the stuff you're doing without bombarding them. It kind of hits that sweet spot of visualization without over explaining. So this is a big part of it and something we had in mind when we kind of developed this feature and when we implemented it and how it fits through everything. So without further ado, not the AI one, although that's a good question too. If anyone knows the answer to the AI tools that can help this person, go answer. So in policies, if you've never played with them, they're specifically for CloudRadial CSA. If you've got Portal 365, you won't see these. You can consider these helpful and you can always upgrade to get them, but keep in mind that this is specifically for CSA. If you already have CSA and you never played with these are super cool. They're found under compliance, they're found under policies here. And the gist is you got all these very visual ways to show clients where they're doing well, where they're lacking, where they need work in a bunch of different business focused areas. And it's one of the things that we're pretty happy with because again, a technology review, depending on the tool you're using, can be super technical or super fluffy. Again, like I was saying, fluffy being like, we have issues with efficiency. Please be more efficient. We have so many efficiency things. That's not really saying much. Too technical would be like starting to read off, I don't know, clock speeds of a CPU to try to convince people that faster overclocking would speed up their, I don't know, their processes. So well, sometimes it's too little, sometimes it's too much. And this fits that nice medium where you're having that kind of business to business conversation. Now, how does this get done? Where do we kind of start from here? My goal when I speak about this stuff is not to tell you that you need to do this with CloudRadial, but this is how we approach it. And just if you could take anything away from this, it's how to think about doing this for your own clients in whatever fashion. But our approach is we typically take stuff from multiple sources. Take infrastructure stuff. Very commonly, people do this with like endpoints, like laptops, desktops, and servers. Like I was saying, the super technical part is you can't really hand somebody a report that looks like this and say, what do you want to make of this, right? And that's what a lot of MSPs kind of have to do because that's what they have available to them. But if you're using CloudRadial, here's what you can do, right? Instead of feeding people stuff that just reads raw data, like here's how many gigs your drive has, or I don't know, like if we look into the configuration option, again, is this an old CPU? Is this a new CPU? Is this a good amount of processors? Is that a good amount of RAM? What's RAM? I have no idea, right? We can take all of this stuff from the CloudRadial agent and recontextualize it into these policies. So really what these policies are doing is they're taking all that data and then you're literally just measuring that up against what you consider acceptable. And we're going to go over the nitty-gritty of the policies to how to customize them to what you mean acceptable. So these policies are what dictates whether 30 gigs of RAM or 32 gigs of RAM or 8 is enough, is too little, and so on and so forth, while sticking to the higher level. And what I was doing with Saffie this morning is I was saying Saffie works with technology all the time, but in the blank, right, if I'm trying to have Saffie over for my QBR and I'm trying to explain my mic may need a new laptop, uh, if I ask her if, hey, do you think that, let's do a different one this time, Saffie, oh, I don't know. Again, is 330 gigahertz, 3.3 a good amount or a bad amount of gigahertz? Do you know anything
Yeah,
about that?
I have like no idea. So, but in thinking about all this, I mean, I can dig down because I have, I can dig out into configurations. I can dig into what our policy reports are telling me as far as, when we have to buy something new or when we have to do something different. But no, I don't know what that is. However, one thing that CloudRadial does very, very well is at least it structures this data so that I can understand it. It's not an RMM report. You hand that to me and I'll just like, whoop, glaze over. But, I can see all my endpoints, I can see who they are. But when I get into that policy report, then I can really look and see, okay, and I focus more on and have been recently with our economic conditions here, but I've been focusing on hardware
Right.
and thinking, okay, this is the time for us to upgrade in a lot of different areas. So I've paid a close attention inside of our policy report to see, where we are lacking or where things need to be redone and, looking at the warranty information. And I think, one thing is I told Ricky this morning is it's nice having that warranty information. However, I'm not into upgrading those warranties. I'm kind of like when you get to 3 years, 5 years, whatever that threshold is, you need new machines because so much has happened. So this actually could be a really good opportunity for you when we're kind of in this, you know, volatility of not knowing what's going to go on with tariffs and just our issues in general. So um you know you can prove to your clients real easily that they need to do something.
Yeah, and that was kind of the point of that Reddit thread, which was, again, if you are doing these things, this is the important part about why a policy thing strategically works. It's if you're doing a really good job and the client's really compliant and they've accepted your stuff and you're green across the board, you still want to show them that you are tracking that. And if anything pops out of compliance, you can see that. And there's a whole strategy to business reviews and proving value there. And if they're not, right, this is another great thing for opportunity's sake. You can set your standard. So let's take a look at the individual policies. Let me show you guys what you can do with these to understand where to even tackle something like this because it's really not very complicated. I think people stay away from them because there's a lot of stuff you could do, but really it's pretty simple. And there's a really popular use case that probably people will enjoy from here too. But the gist is, okay, we're looking at all these policies, and what's happening is, again, not just from the endpoints, but from various data points like user licenses or like MFA status. The more stuff you hook up to CloudRadial, the more policies work with it. But if we just click on the, for example, okay, we'll do like productivity, right? I click it, I get the list of things that are quote unquote wrong. Modern disk storage, okay, this is checking for SSDs. So when I click on this, it's telling me that these are all the people that use, spinning disk hard drives. So now, instead of talking in the nitty-gritty, right? And again, especially here in the States, people are tightening their belts real good. Again, it's kind of a global thing because they want to spend less money. So coming at a lot of these things with onesie, twosie upgrades doesn't really work. This puts you in a really good position to say, like, hey, if the goal is to save money, if the goal is to do this, if the goal is to do more with less, figuring out how to keep these policies focused on initiatives that do that would work. Does an SSD do that? Maybe, maybe not, right? But certainly a lot of stuff on compliance might be really important. Stuff on backup, stuff on administrative restrictions, you name it, right? You can figure out exactly how you want to support and kind of pick your message with these, and they work really well. But when you look at the individual policies, let's look at what happens when you add one. All that's happening is we're asking you, what does it pertain to? Now, these are not fully customizable. You can't go out there and create your own custom policies yet. This is something we probably plan on doing in the future. I say probably because it's kind of a domino effect of other features, but that's not for this webinar. And say we take like endpoint ones. If you want to play around and try to understand them, again, not too bad. You click on a category, you click on the pre-built policies that we have. Some of these are simple yes, nos. Other ones have choices. We call them parameters, and that's what you choose. So a simple yes, no one would be like managed by Intune, right? Is the computer we're talking about managed by Intune? Now you can change the name and the description, and why you'd want to do that if you want to do that is when a client clicks on that and they start to read the policy and they see, right, if they're exploring the portal by themselves, they go, what is managed by Intune? Maybe you work with a co-managed situation, they know what Intune is. Perfect. Maybe you work with people that have no idea. So you basically just want to change this to, can be remotely accessed. Whatever, right? We give you the flexibility to do that. And when we go further down, this is the really important part, in my opinion, that kind of makes or breaks this. It's what are we testing? What are we actually doing? And one of the things that CloudRadial is super cognizant of is we know a lot of people hate agents in general. Like you don't want to go putting a bunch of agents on computers. But one of the things that we really enjoy about our own agent that I would argue is a legitimate reason to put one on there rather than people just saying like, yeah, it's because it's good, is because we know and we share exactly how our agent looks for data, and that applies to policies. So with every single policy, there's a little button called About This Policy that tells you exactly how we are looking for something, exactly what we're looking for, exactly, what are the specifics. Now, and this one's pretty simple. It's just does it have Intune in the installed programs? But the reason that's super important is because policies are meant to be your source of truth, right? We look for the same thing in the same way across the same devices, all the other stuff. So if you want to trust it and you don't want to look foolish, then you have to make sure that you agree with what the policy is saying and how it's looking for something. Because the last thing you want is to turn on policies and have them all wrong because it says something is old and you don't agree with that, right? Maybe its definition of old is older or younger than what you think old is. So taking a look at these is often the first thing. And a lot of times the first foray into policies for our own partners is to just take a look and see if they like what it's looking for and they like how it's looking for it. Then you can also change like if it's on Windows specifically or Mac, or if it's looking for a specific device, and that'll really help you fine tune it. And I'll switch to a different type to show
Well,
you that.
also tell them, Ricky, or let them know that anything under that testing area that the client does not see any of that.
Sure.
So the
Yeah.
client can't get in and go, oh, okay, I'm going to change it to this operating system, or, they can't make changes to the policy.
Right. Yeah. They don't even have the option to add or edit or any of that stuff. But
Mhm.
Let me show you an example of one that has a parameter. So again, Intune, yes or no, pretty simple. Let's pick another endpoint policy. Let's look at one like free space available. This is one of my favorite ones to kind of pick on. Free space available is a super simple policy. It just looks at the size of the drive. Usually it's the main C drive, and it just goes, is there enough free space available? And the idea is that if there's not enough free space available, then either you've got an employee who's not saving to the cloud, and or you've got an employee or maybe just a computer that is just overfilled with stuff and they're going to have some issues. Again, depends on if they're spinning disk. You guys know the drill. So what we do is we don't just say, there's free space available. Now, if we give you the options to tell us, is 20% the limit, right? If they only have 20% space left, is it then triggered and so on? Again, all that detail is exactly listed under about this policy. But the gist is now is that field can appear depending on if we're asking you for, what should we look at? And that's the key here. It's your proprietary knowledge, right? Obviously, every single one of these policies comes with a recommendation of like, hey, typically for Intune, like, okay, that's a yes thing. All right. Even for like old technology is another really good one that came up earlier today. So we have a policy called old technology. Okay, what the heck is old, right? Who knows? Click on about this policy. It'll tell you that like, hey, it's the maximum number of months a processor could be out, and it's typically 36 months out of the box. I've had plenty of MSPs disagree with this. And they say, actually, for us, 5 years is old. And we want to set it to 5. Perfect example, you'd come down a parameter and you would override that to 60 months, 5 years. Stuff like that's a good example of where it can be really powerful because, again, you set that, everyone's measured against your standards, killer. And it's also a good example of what happens and why you can get kind of screwed if you don't read it. Because, again, I've had people come up and say, like, oh man, I deployed the standard policies. And now my clients are asking me why things are old, even though we just sold them a new thing. Well, again, it's not that you're wrong. It's not that they're wrong. It's just set the wrong way. So this is definitely a thing you want to look at, but it's pretty simple. It just takes a couple seconds per policy. The last couple things that are pretty interesting, or you can do an alerting. So alerting, I don't personally recommend it because I see a lot of MSPs that typically already have this done with their RMM. But if you don't, or if this is a special exception, it certainly has its place. The idea is that every time it gets triggered, right, you find a computer that is older than 60 months in our specific policy's case, do you want to send an alert, create a ticket, or whatever have you, right? If you flip that on, then what CloudRadial is doing is on each individual policy, there's a routing section and it'll just go send an alert, right? Create a ticket, do whatever you want. You can even send it just to an email address. So that's pretty good if you want to stay on top of stuff and you want to make sure that something doesn't get slipped through the cracks. And then lastly is just the risk scoring. The risk scoring is where does it fall, right? So we know that there's all these different pre-built options. These are specifically structured in a way that keeps it business focused and is super easy for a business owner, to understand. That's why they're locked in. We're not talking about cloud. We're not talking about this. We're talking about like where does it fit in a business standpoint. So this framework is kind of specific to CloudRadial, but other than the category, you run into how many points of risk does it incur and the scoring method. Now, the reason this matters, and you may care, right? Some MSPs are totally fine with how it is out the box. Some MSPs like to customize it, your call. It's basically saying, what is the points of risk that it incurs when it fails this thing? Now, old technology, if a computer is found old, this is saying as it is out of the box, it's 10 points, 10 points of risk. Uh, is 10 points a lot? Not really. The way that the categories work back here is if it's 0 and we can't find any issue attributed to that category, 0, green. That's how you get green collaboration, no compliance issues. If the total number of policies getting triggered under decision making, for example, or any one of these categories is 1 to 99, it's yellow, and 100 and over is going to be red. So is 10 points a lot? Well, it depends. Do you have 80 computers you're watching? Then, and a lot of them are older than, 60 months like we saw before. Yeah, you'll fly over that 100 pretty quick. So again, I'll rebuild my little old technology one real quick. So it's up to you. It's like you can lower the scores, raise the scores, if it even matters. Most MSPs are totally cool with 100 being the marker of overread. Why? Does it really matter to get this nitty-gritty? Again, if you want to establish a system, go for it. But the point of the policies is to fundamentally give you a standard way to measure across everybody and also generate a conversation, right? You can spend your time messing with the numbers. I've had plenty of MSPs that do it efficiently, But then really, it's good enough if I bring Saffie into a business review and I go like, look, we have these issues with continuity, right? With backup issues, you name it. What this is doing is, does Saffie really care about OneDrive picture mapping, OneDrive document mapping? I would bet not. I would bet Safi is mostly interested in the story this tells, which is just, hey, we should probably be doing something because people are saving stuff wherever. You're probably at risk for data loss, whatever. Cool. That's a bigger conversation and a bigger sales piece than, hey, Safi, did you know that Pablo's virtual machine is not backing up his documents to OneDrive? Right? It might be a little tiny for the conversation. So policies help you elevate
I
them.
kind of watch that stuff because then I know they're not putting stuff in the cloud.
Safi
So
is
that's kind of my thing, but
that's
that's an
true.
operations thing.
Foolish example, but
Mm.
hopefully you get my point. And then last but not least is the scoring methodology. So again, depending on how you like to talk to your clients, again, you don't have to do any of this stuff, but if you're particular, you certainly can. The methodology is, do you want it to, in this case, for this, this is recent OS updates, right? If it finds a machine that's out of, it's not on the most recent operating system update, the major update, do you want it to do 50 points per exception is failure, exception is the same thing. It's this different way of saying like we found one person that's not doing what you want, right? They're negatively affected by this policy. Is it per person, or do you want to do it by any occurrence? Any occurrence is basically a trigger to keep scores low. And the reason you'd want to do that is when you've got a lot of endpoints, say 800, right? You've got companies out there, MSPs out there that have massive CloudRadial companies with thousands of users. Putting 10 points of risk on something can make something easily go to, 50,000 when you start controlling all of these different ones that get triggered. So if you're fine with that and the client doesn't care, that's cool. It tells a good story to go from 50,000 points of risk down to 30, down to 10, down to 0, and you can show that journey, and that's part of showing value. If that's not really the goal, or you're just trying to figure out like we're only good if everybody has this problem fixed, that's a reason you would switch it to any occurrence. Then it basically is just 50 points for the entire organization or 0. Doesn't just keep adding them up. So again, optional, just a way to play with the scores and stuff. But again, I'll keep us a little bit more high level now. That's it. That's all there is to policies. You just have to look at the ones that are out there. And again, if you look at the ones that your portal comes with stock and how you actually deploy that out to everybody, it's not super complex. I mean, it helps to understand the mechanism behind it. But if you look at it, there's a couple different ways, even in the policies area, to see them. You could see them in this chart. You could see them by category. And this is where you would actually see the incurred risk points, right? So in our demo tenant, we have 705 points of risk. And that starts to get people thinking that, like, hey, this is a journey. This isn't just like, yeah, I could install a piece of software and fix a thing. Or we could have a serious conversation about how are we going to get our risk lower over time. And again, even if the risk is 0, having something here shows them that like, oh my gosh, like the MSP is tracking all of these things and they're literally on it, right? They're seeing these things and this is what I'm paying them to look after, not just we've got it or we're doing our jobs. So this is kind of a mix of seeing is believing and also we've got nothing to hide. And the other important thing to note, because I get questions all the time of how fresh is this data, right? Especially from the endpoint. But again, they're not all endpoint policies. Like a lot of the endpoint policies are driven by the freshness of that data. The endpoints check in every day, right? So this stuff can change, but every single day we ping the agent, it comes back, gives us fresh stuff. As a result, every single day the policies also refresh every single day. It's at your nightly sync. So every single day this is updated with the changes that happen. So the other thing that happens is I get a lot of people that say, "Oh, I'm having a business review in a little bit. Whoopsie daisy. I made a couple changes. I want to make sure that they don't get flagged because I want to show them that we're good to go." You can always manually sync it, and that will force the policies to check themselves against the data that moment. So you can have a manual sync option at any time too. And
Always been
then
really interesting, and I'm sorry to interrupt this, but I always look at this and I'm always like in such awe of what it does. And it starts back with that agent. Again, as Ricky said, nobody wants an agent, and we didn't, enjoy making one either. But in structuring the data so that the client can understand it. But to me, it's probably one of the most powerful features of CloudRadial because we take that data, we run it through that policy report, but it doesn't stop there. So if you've got an issue with something, you can put it up on your planner board for that client.
Yeah.
And then you can also run it in through your automated QBR. So it's really, or your on, prefer to say on demand, but this gives you the data, the policies, and kind of puts everything into a package so that you can make sure that every single client gets, a QBR report based on your requirements, your needs, and your expertise.
That's right. And I want to show some of that
Which
in
I'm sorry I opened up that can of worms because I know
no,
you want to get into the planner, but
but that's it. I mean, that's the important thing to take away from this. Again, it's like as much as I love talking about CloudRadial stuff is just figuring out a way to do this in a way that doesn't break your back with labor, right? Because obviously a lot of people try to do something like this that again hits that sweet spot of technical enough to mean something, but not too technical to lose them. And again, like when we start talking about actual use cases, I want to talk about two things before I talk about the business review. They're pretty quick. Number one is what are common use cases for this? So again, you can go peruse the entire list of stuff that we have available as far as policies, and that's cool. I'll tell you right now, the major application that I'm seeing today is Windows 11 checking, right? So we have two policies on endpoints that are super popular. Um, One of them is Windows 11 readiness, and that's from the Windows 11 tool that comes on the PCs, right? That says like, are they good or not? And then the other one to have a really solid and easy conversation with clients is, let me see here, is it OS, current OS version. Current OS version, we could have it check for which computers are on Windows, whatever, right? So really powerful for end of life. So if I put in here Windows 11, for example, I'm going to name this one like a bunch of question marks just so I can identify it. Okay, so basically what happens right now is I just made a policy literally on the fly saying current OS version, checking for Windows 11. And when I hit submit, it won't run that policy, right? Because it does it automatically every night. I'm not going to wait a webinar night. So I'm going to sync right now. And then what CloudRadial is going to do is it's going to regather that agent data, rerun it, and go, got it. We're looking for computers on Windows 11, or rather, not on Windows 11. And it'll show me people who have been exceptions, been failing that policy. So it'll appear down here. You can see I did this earlier with the exclamation marks, but this time it'll be question marks. So let me refresh this. And sure enough, boom, oh, look at we found some issues. So when you click on it and I click on the current OS version, turns out all of these people don't have Windows 11. Well, we can see that, oh man, this is a MacBook. So would it have Windows 11? Short of like Parallels or some virtual stuff? No, right? This is a good example of why it takes a little bit to dial it in because then you're like, duh, maybe I want to change it to the Windows operating system, right? That's a good example of why you'd want to do stuff like that. But in general, now I've identified a really easy opportunity. I have that really clear discussion with my client, and it's all easy peasy right here. If there's an exception that again, we know, for example, we'll say this network test machine is something that does not need to have Windows 11. Yes, the policy will catch it. Darn it, I don't want it counting against it. I don't want my client to say, there's that machine again. We talked about it not needing to be on here, but it's still on here. You can click three dots by individual ones and basically say toggle exception. And what that'll do is it'll say, okay, we got it. This computer, in this case, failed that, right? It's not Windows 11, but you're saying we got it, we acknowledged it, stop counting the points against it. It'll still show, but the points are not going to be added, which is really good because again, then you start to get into the parts where clients really trust and believe your reports because they're consistent and you have the flexibility to say, we understand that there are exceptions in the world. Not everything is necessarily ironclad. And I've been harping on about these policies with endpoints. Again, another quick use case, I won't go too deep, and I want to swap to more of the QBR part like Saffie was talking about is like for users, for example, sometimes you want to see if they're doing course certifications, right? Nothing to do with policies. That's if they're taking their courses inside of CloudRadial. Strong authentication. Do they have MFA turned on or off? That's pulled straight from 365. And one of the more popular ones that we get a lot of is unused 365 licenses. So like we already, if you hook up CloudRadial to your 365 and we see all that stuff, we can easily just have a policy going, hi, did you know you're paying for a bunch of licenses? And if they are, that's a really sweet conversation. Who doesn't want to pick up a phone saying, I'd like to save you $300 by cutting out these unused licenses, right? That's what policies, they kind of give that good feel to the client in general. So last thing, and then we'll swap to the more of the QBR approach, and then all questions and as we like, is how do you do this at scale? Well, policies are a part of content. And if we go to partner content, they're a package just like any other content package in here. And you should have a policies section broken out into a couple different packages. Part of my 11 a.m. crew for the webinar earlier, some people had some older stuff. They didn't have these. So I believe that tomorrow or at some point, maybe a little bit later since it's a holiday here as well, we're going to push out an email to anybody who attended that, again, just in case, it'll have a link to a KB article with the latest of the stock policies. If you don't know and you don't have them and you check your portal and it's missing, no worries. You'll be able to grab the stock ones and modify them from there. So that'll be available to you after the webinar. But in general, they're broken up like this. Again, nothing super crazy. You can go into we'll go into endpoint policies. And what's happening here is we have a folder. It's got the same types of policies. You can go in here and update your parameters, delete ones that are irrelevant that you don't care for, right? Say again, I use software install. This is checking specifically for Skype for Business. You're like, what? I don't care about that. Why would I care? Delete, gone. You spruced it up. You can change it to check for something you do want to check for. You can add more policies. You control exactly the set you want. And the bigger strategic goal is if you're trying to scale the conversations you're having and you want to measure every client the same way, you do this one time and then you push them out and then they're good to go. So my default recommendation is when you create it, when you're first trying policies out, keep it simple. Keep just a couple policies. Maybe old technology is good. Windows 11 is really good. Again, encrypted hard drives, AV, right? You can have even a couple policies, 4 or 5 policies, not crazy. And when you put them in a folder, I recommend just pushing them out to all companies and calling it a day, right? And just going, here we go. This is our set of policies that applies to our clients. And the only other thing I would say, if you're getting a little bit more advanced, because I do want to dip my toes in the advanced stuff, if you have a need to say, create a more advanced policy set, here's how you would do that, just for the sake of argument. So we're seeing that my mouse is hovering right now over endpoint policies, which is a set of these policies published to everybody. Anybody who gets an agent on their computer is going to get measured against these. But if I click on this folder, this is a little Rick's tip for you, and hit save as, what you're effectively doing is copying the folder, right? Which is great. And by making this, a lot of MSPs do something like this. So I had created a copy of the endpoint policies, but now I'm going to call it medical. And when I do that, I've created an exact clone, just new stuff. And why would I do that? Because maybe for certain industries, for certain clients, for certain tiers of service, however you want to break it up, you might have more stringent or more lenient things, right? Again, I know that a lot of businesses here obviously have to do that for compliance purposes. If you're managing the IT for Joe's Flower Shop, whatever. I mean, there's certain base parameters, sure. If you're managing an IT for a hospital, there's a whole different ballgame of what can really be acceptable as far as encryption, as far as, where they're backing up their data. So maybe these parameters get upped. Maybe these rules change. Maybe there's policies that you don't necessarily have for most people that you do have to have for these. So creating these copies, and then what you can do is push them out, not to all, but to specific company groups, is a great, really powerful way to layer that stuff on. Because when you do that, then you end up with a really nice mix of base level, like what is your technology measuring people against, plus what other things can you get into, right? Totally optional, definitely not needed if you're first dipping your toes into policies, but it's nice to know this stuff exists because this is how the really advanced CloudRadial power users do it. They layer in their policies like that. So that being said, quick sip of water, and then I'll get to the more interesting stuff, and then we'll take some Q&A if there's any. Okay, so like Saffie was saying, we have to think bigger, right? I like this topic because the topic is not about policies. If you think this webinar is about setting OS parameters, you're missing the point. It's not that. It's not about this data, these endpoints. It's not about these. It's about, can we make this make sense and have a greater conversation? So my 3 promises were policies, got that one done. Reporting, how do we turn this into an actual conversation for clients? Really, I mean, I'm doing it here because you guys signed up to watch this, right? We're sitting here chit-chatting and you're into it. If I want to prove something to you very quickly, policies might work if I can screen share, if I can get with a client, whatever. A lot of MSPs like to take something to the client. If not to show them all the stuff that you're doing, it's to at least benchmark the work that you have done. And that's where our report can come in really handy. If you've never seen our report, super simple, go to partner and settings in your own tenant And then under configuration, there's a spot for report layouts. And what this report is fundamentally a printout of your portal. So you can make it super, super, super big with all the stuff that it can do, or you can make it hyper specific and you can make different types of reports. So the one that we have back here is comprehensive report, has everything on, I believe. So literally everything you can do is cool. Again, there's nothing in the portal that this thing okay, let me rephrase that. There's nothing in this report that's not inherently in the portal. It just makes a printable version for it. But with this option to show the report to clients or not, like Saffie says, she really likes this term, and I fully agree. It's self-service reporting. It's, kind of that understanding at any point. So if you want to look professional, if you want to get that type of report pulled up and you want to make it make sense really easily, these are good ones to do. So I have one on technology review that's kind of focused on those policies. I have one on the planner. I have one on the licenses. Saffie really likes the license one because I believe we had somebody that literally was
That
like,
just bought because of that license report when I was doing demos. And, I showed him that and he was like, okay, we're done. He goes, I'm buying it. Where do I put my credit card in?
yeah, and
Because
that
he
was,
had
I
a
think,
client that was asking daily, it is so and so on the, what kind of license does so and so have, and so we created this report. And if you click on it, Ricky, you can show them,
yeah,
you
let me
know,
get one going. Let's do it, the actual report. So if you go to account reports and you have that option for clients to run it themselves, I think I turned it off for that one as an example last
turn it on.
time. But yeah, it's like this, the idea here is exactly that. If you got a client that pesters you to see this stuff, or you want to be able to point them to somewhere they can see it, just have them go to their account report section, assuming you've built layouts, assuming it's client facing, have them click it, and then CloudRadial is going to throw that information on the fly the moment they click it. So this is actually generating the stuff time and point, and it even has the date and has your branding. So yeah, go ahead, Safi.
Yeah, and so then, you can come in and go, okay, well, here's what everybody has, here's where the licenses are, where they're allocated, and so forth. But, this was a trigger for an MSP that I had talked to, was just like, I've got clients that just bug me daily because they want to keep up with, who has this license? Did you remove this one? Did you take, add this one? And so this report, I think that's when we actually created that report and we put it into his report for that client. And so then the client could go in every single day if he wanted to, because when we run those reports, they're live. I mean, and it's in real time. So it's not like you're getting yesterday's, you're getting today's right now, which is also something you need to remind them too, is that information is very, very fresh.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of how it comes down to if you take those policies, right? This is the nice thing. This is where we start thinking big picture, right? We have those
There's a
policies.
report here, though, isn't there, Ricky? So if you click on reports,
There's a report here, and this is where it's up to you on how you best consume this stuff. So if you click the report here, now we're at the phase where it's like, again, for argument's sake, we've dialed in our policies. We know what we like to look for. Now we have to present it in a way that makes sense. The report Safi's talking about, there's an individual report you can click on in this section in any client. And what it's going to do is it's going to give you a pretty simple thing that basically says where we're at. Now, you can download this. It'll give you a Word doc. You can do whatever. We even have a code view, so you can grab this and stick it in something else, and like ChatGPT, any one of the code or any AI tool, really good about going like take this, spruce it up, embed it in this. So like you can kind of do whatever you want with it, but it just says like where we're at. That's one level of it, right? This may be good, especially for co-managed situations where people want to document where we were at a certain point, right? And how we're doing over time. This may be fine. Uh, Differently, right? So those reports I was talking about, if you layer in additional data in there, so maybe it's next to planner stuff, maybe it's next to, I don't know, license reports, maybe it's next to policies, right? All the things mixed in, it can have a bigger impact rather than just seeing a chart that says red efficiency, this, that. So those reports, I mentioned them because if you start doing like a technology review like I did, I didn't just put policies, I didn't just put licenses, I kind of mixed and matched stuff too, again, tell the story. So this is a 15-page report, not a 4-page one like last time, but it tells them what the policy is, what the description was, who's failing it, what the risk is, and so on and so forth, right? So it's a little bit easier to understand in context with like, okay, here's how many things we were looking after too. We were looking after 2 domains and 13 endpoints and 2 servers, and here's the things we were looking at and blah, blah, blah. So Do you want to give these reports out to people every time? Maybe, maybe not. The one that I always look at and I'm like, you can do this, right? Check this out. I'm going to error this out on a webinar because I'm a madman, because I love doing that to myself. This is going to take a little bit. It's not going to break. You'll see why I do this on screen. But this is where I want you to use your best judgment, because policies are super powerful. You got to get clients in the portal to look at them. This thing can walk out of the portal, right? You can take this and send it. You can put it in the portal for them, but really a lot of MSPs like to send these reports to their clients. If any one of you sent me a 130-page report, I would delete your email so fast. Like, please don't
Probably
do
get
that.
rejected from the server for being so big in
Right.
this from sending. I don't know.
So
But
the
it
point
is cool.
The point is, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And this is coming from people that literally built this. But I'm just saying, it's up to your discretion to what matters. Now, again, you may have a once in a quarter meeting, like an actual QBR, that somebody wants to drill into all this stuff. More power to you. But most people that I talk to, most MSPs, are trying to get that easy way to understand it. So they want to cut that stuff down. But full power to you, obviously. Like, give it a try. So Saffie talked about it. We saw there's one way to do these reports, pull a report, handle it that way. You could do what I just did. You could throw the report in there and give them that, whatever format, whatever things you want to add in there. Last but not least, if you want to keep it a little bit more dynamic and you want to keep it more topical and you want to keep it more focused, you could just point to specific policies that really bug you and focus on them one at a time. Here's a great example, right? We go to productivity, and again, I say like, hey, I'd really love to hammer on this, disk storage for servers. Like that would be cool. That's not my concern right now. As your consultant, if we're talking about the most effective bang for the buck, you're really going to make sure that Windows 11 thing is up to date, right? You guys are in financial, let's say. It's really risky. Can't have you lapsing security. This is going to open up a bunch of deprecated blah, blah, blahs. Got to get rid of it. We click that thing, and I can hit, for example, the planner button on individual policies. Why do you want to do this? It's less of a huge thing for them to consume and more focused on specific initiatives. And again, you got to know your clients to know which way they best consume stuff. But the idea here is like on the fly, I go, hey, this is maybe a security issue, right? Okay, we got to resolve the policy exception. Let's do Windows 11 or whatever we want to add. I can throw my notes in here on the fly, but the gist is if you're an account manager, if you're walking through with them and you say, this is where we're at, it's going to take more than a meeting to fix all these things. Let's talk about what we want to do now. Let's build a plan. It might make sense to cherry pick the most important ones, hit that add to planner, and then go have that discussion under account planner. And then what happens is, in addition to your projects and your quotes and all the other cool stuff that you have in there, you also have these types of things and make it really real to them. So you're super focused on like, hi, we have this policy, we want to do it. This is the ones that are being accepted. These are the ones that have issues. Let's take care of this. The other,
Well, it's always having that IT roadmap kind of fresh and collaborative. And so they've got it there. And especially today, and I don't mean to focus so much on our economy, but you are going to have customers that are going to be coming to you and go, okay, we need to save money. We need to cut back. We need to be more productive. We need our clients or our employees to be more productive. And so you may turn around and rework all of this based on, their fears, our fears, of where to take them next. And the planner, having that live IT roadmap, um, is really beneficial to being able to present. And I'm able, and I always look at myself as a customer, even though I'm part of CloudRadial, but I think more like your customers do than I think like an MSP. This is visual. I can see it. And it makes a big difference in how I digest it. So, it's there for you. And, it's an awesome tool.
yeah, and let me take everything that you just said and make it negative, which is
Thanks.
sure, which is I don't have to tell you guys, especially those that have to deal with clients. You don't want to be on the hook for a hard-headed client that won't listen to your recommendations, especially if you've gone through the trouble of identifying the issues, recommending something, laying out a plan, but still no dice. So I like the policy approach with the planner probably a little bit more than the full-on like here's the big report, because with this microscope view, granted you are more in the weeds and that is a negative potentially for it. The nice thing is if I'm talking to Saffie and I say, hey, this is a really big issue, right? We've identified this policy. It's been sitting out there. I know exactly when it was done, when we notated it, whatever. I can add more notes if I want to. If Saffie tells me to go kick sand or whatever, and I'm like, okay, well, I have to notate this. I can't necessarily fire you as a client, but I still want to make sure that everyone knows that Saffie said no, right? It never hurts to take these things, right? Saffie said no. Explanation goes here, you name it. Go to your settings of these planner cards. If you've never used these, this is a separate discussion, but also very good. And change the status to client declined. Why is
Yeah,
that
it's
sweet?
kind of like CYA because
Right.
client
Because
declined it, man. I told them and they decided not to do it.
they
So
decided not to do it. As an MSP, I don't need to tell you guys how much of a pain in the butt it is to have to argue with clients going like, well, we were gonna, but well, you said you didn't have money, and then somebody else came in, and then Saffie wasn't available for that QBR, and then the next QBR, Jeff came in, and Jeff said, why aren't we doing this? And I have to explain to him that we tried. That
Sappy
sucks.
said no.
So having that option to specifically follow up with clients and be hyper specific, going, this is the big picture. This is where we want to take you. This is how we want to save you money. This is where we want to reduce your risk. What do you think? And they go, yes, great. That's money. No. Okay, fine. That's okay. But I want to notate that because I want to make sure that everyone is in agreement. And we say, you said no to that, right? Even if you right click it and move it to options, that's something you can always do. A lot of MSPs do that. That'll take it off the main board view, but notate specifically that the client declined it. So you can see that, is it about specifically agents? Is it specifically about policies? Is it specifically about all that stuff? No, this is kind of a bigger conversation of how do you prove value in CloudRadial. Like a lot of MSPs seek that unilateral measurement of the standards because it helps you manage clients better. But it's a really, really, really powerful tool to kind of scale the conversation. Again, if the tool sets are looking for the same thing in the same way and you have the same conversations, that's processes you can build. It's not like the Wild West out there where some clients are super receptive because you got a charismatic person talking to them. The other times you got a process person and that doesn't quite land. Like this really is important to help you scale that up. Again, you don't need CloudRadial to do this, but obviously it was built to do it. And that's why policies are super nice for a lot of MSPs. So again, that's the end of my 20-minute spiel that I take 45
Yeah,
minutes
20
to
minutes. It took 45 minutes. I was just getting ready to stop you and go, okay, we need to see if anybody has any questions.
do.
Y'all are quiet. We were getting, hit hard this morning with our earlier group. So if anybody have any questions, remember to put them in the Q&A so that I can manage them properly.
Yeah, and they don't need to be related to policies or whatnot. We can
Yeah, and
totally.
it can be anything. If you want a quick look at something or want us to show you how to do something real quick.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything. I
I
think
think we got some.
everybody's sleeping.
Could
Uh,
be.
we could go ahead and tell them about the PIA update, which is against my rules, which is we're not supposed to talk about integrations and everything, but it came up this morning.
Sure.
So we share the same information with y'all.
Yeah, so people have been asking us about like what's going on because we've been working with PIA. For those that don't know PIA stuff, it's really amazing automation. RPA in general is a hot up and coming category of product in general. We have our own automation engine in CloudRadial. If you've ever played with that, I invite you to do so. But it's purposely simple, right? We call it drag and drop automations because you pretty much just drag whatever in whatever order, right? You can see specifically, there's not a library of things to do. It's just like, do you want to send an email and then do a webhook or whatever? And it requires some knowledge, but it really does a pretty good amount of stuff, especially with Azure Functions. But a lot of MSPs work with these, advanced RPA tools like Roost and Pia, and they wanted us to solve the problem, which is those tools exist and they do a fantastic job at automating stuff. Where they suffer is that they have the same problem that any other tool does, which is to get your clients to submit a form that automates, that has all these really awesome automations, requires your clients to go to another place that's not your main portal. So Roost and Pia both were just like, hey, we really need to figure out what to do. And then Pia worked with us first. It wasn't like a preference thing at all. And they worked into add in their smart forms. So we've had that in beta for a little bit. The full release goes out next week. And that's super cool. So basically, it just means that their fully automated forms can get embedded into CloudRadial and they show up alongside our forms. They look like our forms. They feel like our forms. They perform very similar to our forms, but they're piped in, which is really big. Again, if you've never looked at any of the PS stuff, I recommend it. And in general, it'll help you give some ideas on how you can really supercharge your onboards, offboards, anything form wise.
Okay, Ricky, I think you were so thorough that nobody has any questions, or you have put everybody to sleep.
I'll take both. But either way, again, it doesn't really matter. I know that a lot of times during these webinars, the best questions come 10 minutes after or 30 seconds after we say, okay, bye everybody. So
After you digest it all.
I even the last one, I got pretty good silence, and then I got three emails going, oh, I remembered. And I was like, of course you did. So if you're one of those people that needs time to digest and or a good Friday and or end of day Thursday, depending on your time zone, don't sweat. Again, if you have specific stuff that you're like interesting, I got to think about it, I need to know, email success@cloudradio.com. That'll put you in contact with your account manager and they'll route you wherever. If you need help with a certain tool, a certain process, whatever, it won't just be them. They'll pull in information from anybody else, support people, implementation people. And if you have anything specific for me, if you want to ask me a question, if there's anything that I showed up or talked about that you want more clarity, you can always email me. It's just ricky@cloudradio.com. So just let me know.
All right. Well, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for attending. And check. Oh, we've got a couple questions. I'm so excited now.
Hopefully it's not just like, when's he going to stop talking? It's like, here.
Oh, Justin, I was going to pick on you, Justin, but I didn't. He said, I'm not asleep. I just have too many questions to articulate them since they are both features I've never started using. So
Hmm.
he's going to start.
So Justin, you're the exact example that I like, which is just like you watch a webinar like this, you're like, cool. There's shit. Okay, there's a lot. Totally fine. Like I said, it's like we're gonna send the follow-up, which includes like the recording and all this other stuff. But as you play with it, like remember I still exist. I don't exist once a month. Just reach out to me. I'm happy to help.
And then Johnny Conkle asked, what's the best way to get our clients to log into CloudRadial? Seems kind of hard for that push. And we actually did a webinar, the last one that we did, which was on client adoption. And the big takeaways there were a lot. We have and I give this example because I was sitting and I can't remember where I was, if I was IT Nation or at DattoCon, but one of our clients was talking about customer success. And what he ended up doing, and he told us, they had 100, and I think they have 120 clients, and he has a 99% adoption rate with the clients. And basically what they did is they did an onboarding meeting for about 15 minutes with each client. So they re-onboarded them and just said, look, this is how we're going to do ticketing now, because as the client, this will help us resolve, your issues quicker. And so they stepped them through, how to do that and how to put the tickets in, and basically kind of selling them on the forms so they could cut that back and forth. And, received very well. They also turned off their support email. And so they get a return reply when somebody emails in that says, please, go to the portal. Here's the link and submit your issue, and it'll put it in the top of the queue. So those were just a couple of ways, that he had suggested. But Johnny, our webinars, we keep them on YouTube,
Mhm.
and you can go back and watch that, because Ricky gave quite a few other tips
Yeah, I
for
have.
adoption. Do you remember?
Yeah, I have that was a good webinar. I think I even have a shortened version on our YouTube channel. It's like 30 minutes, I want to say, that's like specifically like just the tips. No banter, no questions, just literally went to it. Because what Saffie's saying is true. Like those are killer, but they're also the signs of somebody who's like pretty extreme. Like I know a lot of MSPs that are like, I wouldn't turn it off. Some MSPs are totally cool with just going like, no more phone support. And the takeaways from that webinar was also that like people have mixed success, usually far better success with a new client that doesn't have any bad habits. You just come in and you go like, here's where we get the portal. This is where you get XYZ support. Like, bye. But obviously it's going to be harder for new clients that may have been emailing me, may have been calling you to go and say like, sorry, now all of a sudden you have to do this. It's kind of an adoption period. Now, in that other webinar, aside from all the different tips, because again, that was another hour-long webinar, there's a bunch of resources and stuff too. So there's a mix. There's, like Saffie was saying, like a 15-minute call with a key decision maker goes a really long way. but don't just make it a 15-minute call if you can help it. If you can offer any kind of like adoption, I'm not saying you have to go crazy and do full-on video guides and stuff, but there's some stuff that we have pre-built that's really good for just like, here's this, here's a template for how to do it. Here's a little one
Yeah,
page.
we actually wrote an email too that
We
they could
did.
send out, yeah, that you could send out to your clients as well.
So,
Basically, selling it to the client, you kind of have to reverse engineer it. It's like, what's the advantage? What's the benefit to the client?
right.
And we kind of did that in the email.
So
So,
that's a good question. I wish I had enough time to answer it now, like fully, but I would just say like cop out, just go watch what I did before because I think I covered a lot of different ways and realistic and pie in the sky
yeah,
ones.
and you get to hear, did you cut the part out where I was having my coughing attack?
No, I kept it in.
Yeah, I was sick. So,
Base
yeah,
with it.
thanks. Led with it. So, all right. Well,
Any
again,
more? Are
I'm
we?
like so excited that we had questions. Had my group, so our group was quiet.
Thank you guys. I appreciate you.
Yeah. But y'all have a great one. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy your family and enjoy your time off. Do MSPs ever really get time off though?
No, it's like we talk about this like we're not going to see you. It's like, well, I'll talk to you tomorrow, like
Yeah,
everybody.
we'll probably be talking to you tomorrow. I say I'm taking the day off, but probably won't. So you know
All
how
right.
that goes. All right. Have a good one.
See you guys. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.